Hello, lovely, and welcome to the Essence of Expression podcast. Get ready to explore insights, lessons, practices, and wisdom from life for life. I'm your host, Arejay, healer, teacher, student, and sage. I'm excited and honored to have you with me on this journey. Let's dive in. Today on Facebook, there was a post that asked a very interesting question. It was asking about our experience with the Akashic Records. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Akashic Records basically is the record of all things that ever were, are, and will be. And the easiest way to conceptualize this is to kind of think of it as a library where every soul has its own book, and that book contains all lifetimes and incarnations of this soul. So, for me, the Akashic Records is a very interesting place. It's a very informative, let's call it a tool, for lack of a better word right now, to work with. And there are a variety of ways for people to work with the Akashic Records. So I've been working with the Akashic Records. I first started doing Akashic Records readings in 2017. Yeah. And so that was my, when I first got introduced. So the way that I currently work with the Akashic Records is to help others bring untapped gifts, gifts that are like they're currently not tapping into, but they've had access to in previous incarnations, right? Help bring that to their awareness, and to also bring forth healing protocols to help integrate and activate those gifts, or to support them with anything they might be currently dealing with, right? Now, I love the Akashic Records now. That wasn't always the case, though. My first experience with the Akashic Records reading, I was actually really upset, and I didn't like them. and the reason for that was that first attempt didn't go very well. And I was taught a specific process and led through this process, and as part of the process, like, your guide comes with you. And like, shit started out all wrong in the first place, right? Because like, my guide was there, and like, they're supposed to come into this space with us, like, as we move into this space, and my guide was like, no, I'm not going. Now, mind you, this particular guide that I was working with at the time is actually one of my main guides, and he is very much a protector and guardian type, and he hands me off a lot, usually whenever I'm going to be working with a new guide, he will be the one to kind of facilitate the meetup, and until I feel comfortable, like, won't leave me, right? And that's the only way I've ever, that's how I knew him up to this point. And so we got, ready to go into the space, and like, your guide's supposed to come with you, and he's like, nope, not going in there. So I'm like, well, do I want to go in there? Like, what do you know that I do not? Why are you not going in there? So already a little like hesitant and kind of like, I'm not really sure about this shit. But continue with the practice and go through what I'm being guided through by my mentor, and get into the records. Can see it. It's beautiful. It's lovely. Managed to locate my particular book, and I couldn't read it. It was this really thick ass book, and it had like embellished pages. Like, it was old, right? It was old, and when books were very much like an art form, and rare and worth money, right? So it's like gilded edges and this massively big and heavy book, and I sit down to open it, and It's some language I have never even seen before. I can't read it. I'm just sitting here in this like trance state, going through this meditation. I'm like, cool, I have my book and I can't read shit about me in my own book. So I was like, fuck it, this is clearly not for me. And I was really ready to write off the Akashic Records. However, we would always go through the process for ourselves first, and then we would use the same process and go through it for a partner or a couple of partners just to get practice. And it was really funny because so I thought Akashic Records was just not for me because I thought I couldn't read this stuff. So as it turns out, it's just my book that I had an issue with, right? And I'm able to have these really interesting, highly interactive, like almost like movie replays, right? It's not so much a reading of a static book anymore. It is kind of flip open the page and off the page like pops up kind of this movie projector screen and it just plays out in front of me, right? I've met people's guides in the Akashic Records and been able to like describe them in full detail. And I'm not talking like, oh, hey, this is the guide that's coming through and like they have no idea what I'm talking about, but people who do have some sort of spiritual practice and do regularly work with their guides, and I'm like telling them and describing the guide to them and they're like, oh yeah, it's this one, I've been working with this and like this is why we're working together. And so that's been really fascinating and interesting, and get these really empowering like healing processes for people to work with individually. And it's normally what's coming both from like what gifts their past lives can bring forward, right? But also what they need to heal to like activate that. And that's also coming from whichever one of their guides kind of comes forward to help with that process. And I've also been able to learn some really cool things about people, right? Because I've done Akashic Records reading both for people I do know, like friends, close friends, and then also for people that like I've never met you or I met you once and like didn't really talk to you. You were just kind of like in the same space that I was in. And to know, like to be able to know certain things about them and about their life and about their beliefs and everything. And it's not coming from a conversation with them. It's coming from the access to the records. So it's coming from the records themselves, but it's also sometimes coming from the way that I enter the records when I'm going in on behalf of someone and to work with someone and their gifts and their healing process and to help bring that forward. So it's been a really interesting experience for me. I didn't always like reading the Akashic Records. I do enjoy to do Akashic Records readings, and I think it's just a fascinating and wonderful like place, and the ways, like there's so many various ways that people can work with the Akashic Records and with the information there, and it's just so incredible to see the amount of diversity that happens. And I'm kind of always in awe, like when someone else tells me what their protocol is or their practice or how they're working with it and what they're able to do in that work, right? So I wanted to come on and share that because I thought it was an interesting question, and I thought it would be something that maybe some of the people who are a little newer to like the spiritual path or a little newer to, like psychic gifts and metaphysical spaces and things like that may not be as familiar with the Akashic Records. And I just wanted to share like that's, one of an infinite number of ways to work with the information. Some will work with the future information. Some will work with all the information. It really kind of depends, and every reader is a little bit different. So if you're considering getting an Akashic Record reading, like ask them how they work with it, right? Like ask them what the reading is, what are the results that you can expect, kind of what intention do they access it with, right? Because those will differ. So some people are like looking to be able to foretell your future. Some people are, looking for moments like what caused a disconnect that you're feeling now, or something you're struggling with now, like how is that related to maybe a past life. So there are any number of ways that it can be read, any number of ways that it can be worked with. And so, if you're curious about it and you're wanting to get a reading, definitely vet your reader. Feel free to ask them questions, and also just kind of have a general understanding of how, like what type of reading they're doing, because it's different for all of us. And that's not to say that any way is wrong, but I just want you to be able to be aware of like, what can you get out of it, and what is like the general process that they're going through for it, so that you can kind of have an idea of what energy they're accessing, how they're going about that. Thank you for your time and attention. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, share this episode with them. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night or day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.